Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we're going to be using lots of dies, starting with these layering, what are they? Layering holiday, is that what they are? Layering holiday bells? Let me see, because of course it wouldn't be right in front of me. Layering holiday bells, I did get it correct. And then we're using the Jingle All the Way sentiments, the vintage layering labels, and I feel like I'm missing something else. Oh, the Christmas country wreath. We are using that as well. So here what you see me doing is I am just taking some white cardstock and I am just putting down a base layer of distressing. I am going to be doing Copic coloring over the majority, well, all of the dies, really, except for that vintage layering labels. But I like to have a base color. This helps me with a couple of different things. So when I lay them out, I can see what colors I'm using and where all my dies need to go. So that I can put all the pink on the pink and the teal on the teal and the green on the green and so on and so forth, and you get what I'm saying. So it just helps me visually kind of map out where all of my items need to go. But then it also gives me just a base layer of color to put the Copics on top of and save me a little bit of ink. So once I have these where I want them, I am going to secure them down with some low tack tape. And then the large wreath, I had to run through my my Spellbinders Platinum 6, but the other ones I used my Bitty Buzz Cutter for, and this was super convenient because as I ran them through, then I could put them in their little, like I have a little cup, you'll see here in a minute, so that I can keep track of all of them. I also use another little cup to put in all of my dies. That way I don't lose them, because I'm not going to take the time when I'm in the middle of making a card to put them back into their like packaging, into their little sticky parts. So these little cups help me keep track of them until I'm done with the card and I'm ready to clean up my desk and move on to my next project. So just kind of walking you through my process. I do want to mention before we get too far into the video, if you are watching right in the beginning when this comes out on November 26th, Honeybee actually has one of their 4 days. They're very generously having 4 days of sales, but today's sale is buy one, get one half off on all dies. Standalone dies, companion dies, doesn't really matter. Are having a very, very good sale on those. So I just wanted to mention that if you're watching before midnight, after midnight, it is what it is. I can't help you. I apologize. The video, I apologize. My video didn't come earlier in the day. So here I'm just going through and I don't throw away any of my pieces. And what I mean is like the pieces that are left over. So like you see the pink up there, all of that, leftover space, I keep those because as I am laying out my card design, sometimes I find that I need to cut extras than I originally cut, and I have for sure had to go digging in the trash to get out cardstock that I've pitched, and I've had it ruined by like a wet baby wipe that I threw in there, and so now I just set them to aside till I am done doing what I'm doing. I've also cut additional little sprigs of pine, which is also included in that A Country Christmas Wreath set, as well as some other little leaves. I cut some leaves out of the teal as well, just to offer like a different kind of leaf. I think it's supposed to be mistletoe. They have like a little spot for berries, but I did not utilize that with this particular card. Here's a great example. I've laid out my whole wreath and I realized that I need another pine leaf, or I'm sorry, another one of those other leaves, because I only have 2 and I definitely need 3 for a more balanced design. And so I had my little scrap sitting there. I also laid out my bell to make sure that I was going to be happy with that. And then we're going to get into the coloring. If you are a person who is watching this simply because you want to see the press and seal hinge method, you need to jump to the about 19-20 minute mark because I'm going to do all of my Copic coloring before I'm doing any of the assembly. So for the coloring, Several of you asked in the video where I asked you what you wanted to see. Several of you said you wanted to see Copic coloring of die cuts. And so ask and you shall receive. Here we are. Now, you guys also know that I love stamped images. Dies aren't necessarily really my go-to. And I'm going to be honest with you, this card took me a very long time just because dies aren't necessarily what I'm familiar with. And you can even see here in the coloring of the wreath, as I'm going along, in the beginning, I was real hesitant to color too much of anything because I wasn't really sure how it was laid out. And then as I'm going, I'm getting a better feel for, okay, there's a branch here, there's a better branch here. And so that way I can start filling in a little more of it. You may also know that I noticed that I have started with my darkest color. I started with my darkest color because I'm adding in the shadows. This took quite a bit of time for me to kind of figure out what I was doing, and so portions of this will be sped up, but I did want you to be able to see the whole thing kind of come together. But this part of this wreath and the branches is just very repetitive. So I went in with my darkest color and I laid it down just where I wanted the shadows. So in the center of what would be the branches that we're creating, and then along the bottom of each of the pine needles is where I laid my darkest shadows. And then I'm just going to go in and go right over top of that with my midtone. And then for these particular images, I'm only using 3 colors. Normally I use 4, but it just really didn't seem like it was necessary to get good dimension. And that's probably because the die cut is already in its shape. You know what I'm saying? It's already the shape of a wreath with the pine needles. There's a lot of detail there with the die already. So I don't have to do as much work to get a more realistic look. The other thing that I wanted to talk about as well is the color combination. So I did have a portion in here originally where I kind of showed you the color wheel. I ended up having to cut it out because the video was just too long. And I know that all of you guys are like, they're never too long, but this one was actually too long for me. Because I am working on a limited time, and so it takes me X amount of time to edit it and then X amount of time to do the voiceover, and so I cut it due to my own time. But I did want to share with you how I chose the color palette. So analogous colors on the color wheel are colors that are right next to each other. And so I went with a yellow green, a green, and a blue green. They're all right next to each other. They're analogous. The complement to yellow is purple, to yellow green is red violet, to green is red, and to blue green is red orange. So that's how they work. Their complementary colors are opposites on the color wheel. So I chose analogous colors, and then because the yellow green, i.e. my wreath, was the largest portion of color on my card, I went with its complement, which is a red violet, for just a pop of color. So I went with the pink because I knew that it was going to create that contrast and make kind of the whole color scheme really pop. And I was very happy with the color scheme on this one. I think that it works really nicely together. And while it's not traditional Christmas colors, it still feels very much like Christmas. So here with the pine needles, we're doing the same thing we did for the wreath. So you may see me turning the tape around, and it's just because it gives me a better angle. If you guys have watched my videos before, you know that when I've talked about Copic coloring, I've pointed out that some people are comfortable flicking the marker away from themselves, and some people are more comfortable flicking the marker toward themselves. I am a person who is more comfortable flicking the marker away from myself, and so that is why you see me kind of turning them so much. The tape trick here that I'm using to hold these little dies does work mostly. I just want to let you know that sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's just too much moisture on the die and it won't hold them, or if they're really tiny and you're putting a lot of color down, it almost gets like where there's too much water and it can't hold it. And so you'll see later on with like the little trim for the bells, I eventually just gave up with the tape. I was like, I'll just hold it with my fingernail because I'm not fighting with this and chasing it all over my desk. Which you guys know is my number one complaint with dies. But I have found, like this little tape trick, the little cups, you know, keeping track of those dies, keeping them where I'm not chasing them around really does increase my enjoyment in using them. And I would like to encourage you to try to watch things. Like, some people have made the comments, and I'm not just talking about my videos, I'm talking about all people's videos. Have made the comment like, the card just didn't really seem like it interested me, so I didn't watch the video. So my friend Dawn, her card making style is very different, and you may have seen her. She owns W+9, but she uses a lot of Honeybee because she's a fantastic person, and she believes in supporting I guess what would be her competitor, because they're her friends and they're also small businesses, and in this craft community we're all kind of in this together. And so she uses other people's product and she's fantastic. But I always watch her videos, not because her style is necessarily my style. It's not. But because she is so talented and so knowledgeable. And so even though her style is not my style, I still learn a lot from her. So here with this, I decided that I colored the trim pink originally, but I wanted to change the color. And sometimes that's okay. Like, you know, we used very light colors. We didn't do layers of distress ink or any other ink blending. We just used a very light color. So it was pretty easy to just go in with my teals and cover that up. I should also note that you don't have to do the distress ink. If you have colored cardstock that you really like and you're happy with that as a base color, you can Copic color over those as well. You just want to make sure you have like an 80-pound weight at least, because Copics mix in the fibers of the paper. So if you have something that's real thin, the Copics aren't going to work very well. They're going to bleed through. It's just not going to be a good look. So here with the bell, you see me layering one on top of the other, and this is so I can find my shadow area. For the bell, to give them a more round appearance, I am adding the shading to the left and the right-hand side. That's going to put my highlight in the center and make them appear more dimensional. The only exception to that is the portion of the bottom bell, which will be the inside. And in that case, I will add shading to the top of it where the first bell's laying over it, and then also around the edges. So the shadows will come in from the sides and then on top of both the edges, almost like we were shading an oval. And you'll see that as we go on. But so the reason that I'm telling you that sometimes even if something doesn't seem your style, but it's still a teacher that you know is very knowledgeable, that it might be worth your watch, it's because this Hinge method that I'm about to show you, I learned from her, and it's brilliant. I take no credit for this whatsoever. I saw it on her video and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. You are so smart. Like, you are just the smartest person I have ever met in my life. Like, it's that good, but it's not mine. I did not come up with this. I saw it on her video. Now, I don't know if she saw it somewhere else, but she taught it to me. And she taught it to me on a die cut heavy multi-layered card that almost no, it was shabby chic. It didn't border on it. It was straight up shabby chic. And you guys know that's not my jam. I love bright colors. I love minimal layers. I love things that look very clean and simple. Shabby chic and me don't even sit at the same table. But because Dawn's friends with us both, I got to learn something really, really cool from a video that if it wasn't my best friend's video, I may have skipped watching. So if you know somebody has a lot of knowledge about, you know, crafting or the things that you want to learn, even if the card that you're, like the current card they're making isn't necessarily your jam, you might still want to give it a go, because there could be something else that you could be gaining from there, even if it isn't that style. So here, again, we're going lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. This top bell is really the bell that's important. The bottom bell, I'm only showing you all of the shading on it. on its top portion, so that way if you decide to, or if you have this die set and you want to do the shading, you can see how to do it. But that shading on this portion of the bell is totally not necessary because it's going to be completely covered up by the top portion. Again, I am just showing you in case you wanted to know how to color it. The only shading that's important on the bottom piece is that oval. Now, would I still go around the edges with my darkest color? Yes, I would, because they are stacked on top of each other, just to make sure that when you look from the side, it wasn't like stark white. So now with that done, for the clanger portion of the bells, I just went in and filled it in with the, I did the shading with the same yellows, just on the top and bottom, and then I filled in the bottom portion with my darkest color of pink, which I apologize. Apparently, I cut out it showing it to you. I used an RV 52, 55, 66, and 69. And all of that is always linked below. In the YouTube description. So here, doing the shading to the bow, I'm adding shading coming out from where it's tied. There'd be shading there, remember, when 2 points meet. But then there's also a notch in the bow, and so I added a line of shading there as well, and that helps to give it a more dimensional look, and that notch was already put there by the illustrator. For the top portion of the bow, I'm adding shading just underneath, and then like one little line out, and then one little line down the center where they're closer together. There would be more shadows, and then we're just going to blend it out lightest to darkest like before. So this is a totally different card for me, and it did take me a long time because it's not my forte, and that's okay because I still learned quite a bit. And for me, the process is the part that I enjoy, like the making of the things, not necessarily the thing at the end, like the product at the end. But I enjoy making the things, and I enjoy learning new things. And so because I kind of pushed myself out of my comfort zone, I did learn quite a bit. For this decorative piece on the bell, remember we added shading to the top and the bottom of the bell. So because this is going to sit on top of the bell, we have to add the shading the same way or they won't make sense together. So we're going to do shading on the left and right hand sides. It's a scallop edge. So there is just a little bit of an indent at the bottom. And so I did add shading to that as well. And then again, just continuing building up that color, darkest to lightest, and blending them all out. You can see I cut 3 here, and this is something else that I do. I always cut extras because I lose them, and then I'm frustrated. I have to get my die cut machine back out. I got to dig my paper out of the garbage. Like, I'm mad about it. And so I've learned if I just cut an extra while I'm in the process, then I will be happier with that. Here, I knew that I wanted to do the little decorations in between teal, but I cut them out in pink, and I was not prepared in any fashion to go back in there and cut them out in teal again. So I just colored the top die cut because this piece is going to fit over it and you're not even going to notice that it's colored. So I went in with the teal originally, and it looked just a little too green, and that's because we put it on top of the yellow. Like, that's just realistically, I have all this yellow down and then I put the teal on top, and it is going to be more green and less blue. How am I going to fix that? Well, I'm going to add some more blue. That's how I'm going to fix it. And then I'll go back in with my teal again over top of it. And then it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty close. And I was happy with it. So now for the clangers, they have a little circle that goes over top of them if you'd like to add it. And I colored them with my pinks as well. And I'm just adding shading from the bottom towards the top. Not really anything too terribly interesting with those. For the berries, they all meet, and where they meet is going to be the shadow point. And so that is where I am adding the shadows to, just kind of bringing it as I'm going through each individual color, kind of bringing it down and around the sides, and then finally finishing it out with my lightest color. And I did that for all of the berries. So now, one last die cutting thing we need to do, which is the vintage layering labels. And I just did white on white because it was enough to add interest, but we already got a lot going on with this wreath, and so I don't want to distract from that. So once I have it die cut out, I'm going to go ahead and adhere it to my card front. And again, like I said, just white on white. They're identical top and bottom, but you'll notice when I go to glue it down, I flip it over. And that's because there was like a spot that I didn't see on my cardstock. And so I wanted it to be more toward the top where it would be covered by my wreath because I didn't want to cut it again. Like, that's just facts. So now we're going to start the assembly of the items. You should, before you're starting to put everything together, as far as the card, you need to assemble all of your things. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to put my bells together. I'm going to put my ribbon together, have them all glued and secured in one piece. And then we will get to the assembly. I did originally just glue down the top of this bell, and then I realized I got to slide a little clanger in there. And so I just kind of pulled it back up. I'm very fortunate that liquid glue, the Honeybee liquid glue, gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Originally, I put the clanger down facing the wrong way, but as soon as I flipped it over and looked at it, I realized that it would not face that way. If it was tilted to the right, it wouldn't look that way. So I had to fix it real quick, and that was all fine. Again, just trying to lay them out so that I can see how they're going to look. You don't have to do, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. So many things. Oh my gosh, we have so much information in this video, y'all. You don't have to do where the bell is open. The bell I'm using for the base, you can use by itself. You don't have to do it where it's open. And you can also use the clanger from there as if that bell was more like pushed back instead of up. And there are several of my crafty design team friends here for Honeybee that have done it that way, and it looks great. So that's not something you have to do. So again, just, adhering these all together. I do have to say that can you hear my child? I don't know how you could not hear her. She is just talking up a storm downstairs to her father. My guess would be that she's just started this new thing where she throws her pacifier and then goes, uh-oh. And so my guess is she has thrown her pacifier, and because my husband thinks that she thinks it's a game, and honestly, she probably does think it's a game, he will make her wait to get it. And so I think that's why she's just chatting it up so much. So now we are finally to the Hinge method. I have some Glad Press and Seal. Thank you, Ken McGuire. And so here I have everything laid out how I want it. I am working on a glass mat. Remind me to come back to that. The glass mat. And so here I am smoothing down the press and seal to my glass mat first. And then I am smoothing it over all of my die cuts. This is going to create a hinge. Now, I probably should have taped my card base down before I started, but I didn't. So now I'm just going to peel this back so I can get some tape on there and my base isn't going to move. And then from there, I will be able to pick this up as one whole piece on a door and add glue to it, smush it back down, glue it down, pick it up again, do the next layer, pick it up again, do the next layer. So easy, so easy. Oh my gosh, Dawn, the smartest girl I ever met. Like, this is game changing for me because I've told you guys I don't like the finicky bits, and that is why I struggle with dies. I don't want to chase them all over. I don't want to lose them. I don't want one to go left and one to go right and one to go north and one to go south. I don't want any of that. But this totally eliminates this, and it's so brilliant because I have multiple layers here, okay? So I have my base wreath. I've got my pine on top of it, then I have my teal leaves on top of that, then I have my berries, then I have my bells, then I have my bow, and this is just making it so I can just do it all at one time. I laid it all out and then I could just be very quickly done with it. Now, let me tell you some things I learned from personal experience, okay? So the first one, I put down my wreath, and then a bunch of these green leaves were also exposed, so I put glue on those too. And some of them didn't stick. And so I went back in and I put more glue on the green leaves, like the teal ones. And then you're going to see here in a second that I try to put it down again, and some of them still won't stick, but I'm having a hard time peeling them up, but they won't let go of the press and seal. What had happened was some of my green leaves were actually on top of my pine needles, and I didn't realize it. So my pine needle wasn't glued, but the rest of my green leaf was. But the top of the green, like the teal leaf, was trapped in between the pine and the press and seal, so we couldn't completely release. So now this time I realize I have to glue the pine needles first. So just pay attention to your layers. That is the thing that I learned with this, is that you have to make sure your layers are very clean and they're not overlapping layers, that like they're not on top of layers that are also underneath them. Also, you want to make sure that you are going in and double checking that everything is adhered. So, for example, where my leaves are, whether it's the teal leaves or the pine leaves, I keep saying that, pine needles, some of them are on top of each other. So I'm only able to get glue on a certain portion of them. So you do need to check as you're going through in between layers that there's glue on all of your things and everything is adhered down. Because there is a way that you can adhere just a small portion of the leaf and not the entire thing, and then you would run into an issue. So once I was done with the berries is the last thing I did with the Hinge method, because I wasn't really happy with the way the bells looked. And so I decided, because they were a bigger piece, they were already assembled, that I would go in after. So here I'm going to get the berries down, and that little one that fell off, that little one that I just took off, because it was actually tucked behind the bell. And I didn't want to waste my coloring, to be quite honest. I wanted you to be able to see all 5 of the berries that I colored, because I took the time to color them. But so the bells were big enough that I just removed them from the press and seal and then glued them by hand. I felt like the placement for them was much better doing it this way. But yeah, the Hinge method like totally changed my life for building up die cuts. I cannot believe it. It's so good. Yeah, so that's that. So now that this is done, the only other thing that I did is I went in, well, I have to do the sentiment, but I went in with some stickles to fill in that area where I didn't have a die, where it was the teal. And this just kind of masks the fact that it's, it wasn't flush. And then I stamped and white heat embossed the Christmas bells are ringing sentiment with our brilliant white pigment ink. And then I heat set it with some white detail embossing powder and then cut it out with its companion die. I'm going to put that down center of the wreath, and then I added some more stickles to the berries, and I added some shimmer with a clear shimmer pen to my bells, and then that is it. That is the whole card. Totally different for me. Great learning experience. I hope you guys learned something too, and don't forget to check out the sale. It's buy one get one half off for all dies through the end of tonight, and then there'll be a new sale tomorrow because Honey Bunnies is the best. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.